let's talk about ancient Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
I've been looking into a lot of, talking to Dr. Greer, we talk a lot about zero-point energy.
Yeah.
I've been looking into zero-point energy, free energy. I've been researching it, looking into the Nikola Tesla stuff, and it sounds like Nikola Tesla got his information somehow from ancient Egypt. A lot of people say that the pyramids were some type of a power plant.
Yes. Not all the pyramids, some of them. So some pyramids have different functions, right? So the Great Pyramid at Giza, for sure, a wireless power plant, amongst other things. It was a multifunctional stone computer and a wireless power plant. It was also a communications device. So if you look at old images or old pictures of the Great Pyramid area at Giza, you'll see that the Nile used to run right up alongside of those pyramids. Now it's meandered miles and miles away. One of the main reasons why they don't want you to know is there was an ancient war that happened. That war, that second war I told you about, that's why there's glass in the sands at the Giza Plateau. When you dig your hand in the sand, you'll pull up balls of glass. That's 3,000 degrees to create glass out of sand. That's weapons fire. There's still evidence of weapons fire on the Bent Pyramid right out there at Giza as well. But nonetheless, the water would run underneath in these gigantic aquifers. The tubes for those aquifers are still there. You know, sometimes I've gone down in them. Even kids play around in them and everything. But when you have running water underneath magnetized crystal granite, which is what the base is made out of, you create something called physiostatic electricity. Then those ions rush up into the Grand Gallery area, and there were these resonating rods going up the Grand Gallery to the King's Chamber. Now, the rods are gone, but the slots where the rods sat are still there. They can't take out the slots. The slots are embedded in the stone. Then also, when it got into the King's Chamber, he's surrounded by thousands of tons of magnetized crystal granite in this specialized box with a 2-to-1 ratio. Now, at some point, something happened where they had to install this extra box. It's a granite box that's inside the King's Chamber. People were saying, oh, this is a sarcophagus. I can't even lay in that thing. My knees have to be bent. It's not a sarcophagus. What it is, it's the same exact dimensions as the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant was a power plant device. We know this based on the descriptions in the Bible. And it's been replicated at 2 different universities by 2 different groups of people, and it generated so much power they had to shut it down, just based on the biblical information and instructions. When you take those measurements, it fits directly inside that box. And why did it fit in the box? Because the pyramid at some point had lost its ability to generate the maximum amount of power. And so that was needed to add an extra piece to fix the problem. And that's exactly what they did. Then the energy would shoot up through the apex. The obelisks are all made of crystal granite.
What do you mean the obelisk? What is that?
Those giant stones that stand up with the points at the top?
Okay.
Those are obelisks.
Okay.
They're all around the region. We have one at the White House, right? You know, we have one in Rome in the center courtyard there. They took them and put them all around. The one in Washington is obviously, it's man-made, but the other ones around the world are all come out of Egypt. But what's interesting is those obelisks, they capture the ambient electricity from the atmosphere. And then if you have something called a JED, it looks like a Tesla coil. I'll send you some photos of this stuff so you can utilize it. It looks like a Tesla coil, and it's all over Egypt. Everywhere you look in hieroglyphs, it's everywhere. And they have cables coming out of them, electric cables. They were connected to their electroplating devices, and anything else they needed, light bulbs, anything that needed electricity was connected to the JED. The JED would capture the ambient electricity from the obelisk. The obelisks were like electric wire poles in your neighborhood, basically, but just doing it all wirelessly. And by that method, they were able to transmit the wireless energy all around the region. And the JEDs would capture that energy, and they can power whatever they wanted. And so, now what's also interesting about the Great Pyramid, a small amount of that water would be pushed up into the pyramid and down into the Queen's Chamber. Now, the Queen's Chamber, when you analyze it and look at it, and look at the x-rays of it, you discover something interesting. It operates like an electrolysis machine. Why electrolysis? If you use electrolysis with running water, you can extract the hydrogen atoms out of the water, which is what we do in different types of engines that we have right now. The Navy has a ship that never has to come back for gas because it just takes the water from the ocean, extracts the hydrogen atoms, and pushes it into a chamber for engine combustion, and they run on hydrogen. They don't run on gas anymore. Matter of fact, that's the wave of the new future. We have Rolls-Royce developed an airplane engine that runs on hydrogen, and all the cars, including all the EVs, are going to go in the garbage can. All cars are going to be hydrogen-based in the next 10 years. Mark my word. Remember today. So what they were doing, though, they were utilizing it for what astrophysicists use it for, communication. Astrophysicists communicate and send information out into space on the hydrogen frequency, the most abundant frequency in the universe. Now, when you look at the Great Pyramid, it's got these giant shafts on the sides that align with Orion, Aldebaran, Arcturus, and all these other star systems on specific time frames, Sirius. And so what's happening is on specific alignments, they were transmitting on the hydrogen frequency updates, in my opinion, this is now my own hypothesis, updates to those star systems. Because why have those shafts pointed at star systems, and why have them have the capability of shooting hydrogen through those shafts? To me, it's a communications device, the same way we're using right now today in modern astrophysics.
What are we using in modern astrophysics?
We take the hydrogen frequency and we piggyback our data, zeros and ones, on it, and we send it out into space. Looking and hoping that another race of beings, I think that they already know who they're sending it to. They're just saying, we're hoping. I think they're communicating, but that's a whole other podcast. But sending it out into space, that another race of people can pick it up and then decode the zeros and ones and decode the message, basically, and then transmit the information back on the same frequency.
What makes you think that they've already made communications?
Well, to me, just based on the advancement in sciences and what looks and appears to be of NASA as a front, the fake space agency, in other words, doing all the things that are already done in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, and still utilizing those same techniques today, knowing that we know that they're 300 years ahead of us technologically. They meaning the private corporations. Well, why aren't we seeing any of that tech being used? So I just believe that, and I know this 300 years ahead from my private meetings. So I have a tech company called First Class Space Agency. And I was privy to a TS clearance for private space meetings at the Space Symposium in Colorado a few years ago. And in this room, I'm sitting there with some of the top tech companies in the world in space, travel, and also ancillary parts for space, like radiation hardened computer circuits and everything else. And they're all talking about how advanced, they are. And the number is 300 years ahead of the general population. So if they're 300 years of the general population, 300 years ahead, then what in the world are we doing with chemical rockets going up into space and all this kind of crazy stuff? Mm-hmm. So to me, when they say that they're communicating, I say, let me extrapolate a little bit more. They're trying to communicate. Let me extrapolate. You are communicating. This is just the way I decode it is there's something going on. They've probably made some kind of a type of contact at some point because they keep transmitting nonstop, up and down, nonstop. There's even a dish on the moon that we transmit via laser information to every single week. Who are we talking to on the moon? This has been going on for decades. Why are we doing this? So you got to pay those people to do that, so it's costing money. So there's a reason for this. So my hypothesis is that they may be communicating with somebody already. But I do believe that's what the Great Pyramid was used for, power generation. And when I say other things, you can calculate based on the base size of the pyramid and the height and the size of most of the stones average, you can actually calculate a lot of things. You can calculate the distance of the Earth to the moon, the distance of the Earth to the sun. You can calculate the speed of the Earth on its own axis.
Hold on. How can you calculate all this?
Well, when I have all these calculations broken down, which have been analyzed by college professors, and they're blown away. I'll send you a sheet you can show on the screen for this, the breakdown of the mathematics, how to times and square all these numbers to come up with these calculations. You can calculate the tropical year, the sidereal year. You can calculate the speed of the Earth around the sun, the speed of the sun around the Milky Way. You can even calculate the speed of the Milky Way around the local cluster of galaxies that are out there. All this can be calculated by the construction. This is the brick masonry. This is the Freemasonry encoded into the Great Pyramid. This is the Mason information. It's all about astrophysics. It's all in there. It's all built into the pyramid, all in the construction process. Now think about that knowledge you have to have. You have to say, I want to have this, and this, and this, and I want to have it all built into the construction. Let me input this into my whatever kind of computer program they utilize to do this, and then it spits out this blueprint, and they build it according to that blueprint so that all this information is encoded in it at the same time it's being built.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. When it comes to, you had mentioned a little bit earlier that you think that all vehicles are going to go to hydrocarbon.
Oh, yeah. Hydrogen.
Correct? Hydrogen, excuse me.
The hydrogen atoms, yes.
Somebody already developed this.
Yeah.
And they're
Stan
no
Meyer.
longer here. Is
Stan
that his
Meyer.
name?
Stan Meyer in the night. I remember watching that commercial live on TV as it aired on the news station, standing right next to my mom. That he drove this little buggy he built, run on water. You can go from New York to California on 1 gallon of gas. He said you can piss in it, you can spit in it, you can put snow in it. This guy was going in. And I was so amazed. I was like, this is crazy. This is incredible. Of course, he went to a restaurant where he met with some Pentagon officials, and then he ran outside and screamed, they poisoned me, and he died right there, right in front of his brother. And so at the time, they wanted to do away with it. We got to a point now where the world is fed up and tired of these pipelines and invading countries to take over their resources and trying to build pipelines through the middle of countries that don't want the pipeline. It's a big thing. It's a big, big problem right now, and it's driving economies up and down. It's causing billionaires to become millionaires. And when it starts affecting their pockets, something's got to change. So now we have this big push, right? This EV thing came. EV still use what? They use gas. They still use fuel. Why? Because when you plug that car in, down the street, the power station is using oil to give you that electricity. And then the infrastructure will never be good enough to house, billions or millions of cars in the U.S. economy. It just won't happen. Just one hurricane in Florida, you'll see it'll be a nightmare because you won't be able to evacuate. Because when you get to about 100 miles away from your house, you got to turn around and go back home. And you can't get in a line to charge your car. The lines will be longer than gas lines.
Yeah.
So it's a nightmare waiting to happen. The push now is going to be all hydrogen. Everything will become hydrogen. All cars, EVs will die. The batteries are not recyclable. The cobalt and the lithium are made with forced child labor, right, in third world countries. Kids literally mining with their bare hands, pulling this ore out of the ground, getting caught in collapses and mine collapses and dying and everything else. All that's got to come to an end. All we need is for one rogue nation to take over one of these biggest lithium and cobalt mines and hold the world hostage for the cobalt and the lithium, and everything comes to an end, right? The prices will super skyrocket. There'll be a shortage of batteries in cars, and you can't recycle them because Elon Musk made it open source battery. So everyone who created a battery created them slightly different. There's no one mechanism or method to take these batteries apart and recycle them. So they're filling up in landfills by the thousands. And even in China, there's already millions of landfills, and they're more toxic for the environment than a regular old-fashioned engine, crankshaft.
Yeah.
So it's pretty dangerous stuff, and it's leaching into the water supply. We're drinking this poison and everything else. It's going to shorten our lifespans. They got to get away from that. They're going to go into hydrogen next.
Yep.